confused too.
All right, we're live, guys.
Yeah. See that white stuff? Can't eat syrup. I'm giving out candy syrup. I'm having surgery on the first, so. That would be well. I'm just feeling like we gave something fixed. Like a breathe. I was reaching my out of pocket maximum, so I'm not using it done now. I might be able to breathe one day. Thank you. All right.
I was just working on it.
No, we left more stuff over there. All that out. Probably scared him when we came in, you know. People like, oh no, I gotta get out of here. We can all sit in their spot.
Want me to kick it over to you?
No. I'm sure.
You managed to be separated from your grandkids. I'm impressed. I thought for sure you'd be bringing the child in here with you. I could just see you sitting here in council meeting. Not letting it go. Not letting it go.
We had a big. He pooped.
Yeah.
He pooped for 3 days.
Ooh.
Yeah, so that was a big moment.
Take pictures. Video, I mean.
I wasn't there.
I'm okay with that.
It's okay. I did get to change poopy diapers though.
Oh, good.
Oh, that's nice. Whatever makes you happy.
What's that, 6? It's 6.
It's the-
Yeah,
Okay.
my phone says 6.
Let's start this meeting tonight. The ordinance agenda, ordinance committee on October 18, 2021. The first item I have on the list was, this was handed to me by one of the council members. Jeff, the parking penalty be raised from 10 to 25 and the second offense to 25 to 50. How does somebody feel about that?
I like this.
You like the way it is?
I think it's enough to make a point, but it's enough to make you not wanna get the car out of the road.
I think the concern was that $10 wasn't enough, that some people were ignoring it. Just allowing them to accumulate.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, my opinion's always been that, like, on a first offense, someone should just get a warning and not actually get a ticket on their first offense. The second offense should be ticketed. Third offense should obviously be ticketed, every time after that. Because I think there are, times where somebody might just accidentally leave their car out or something like that. And I don't think they should necessarily be penalized for that. But it's really the people who blatantly violate the ordinance over and over and over again, knowing that they're violating the ordinance and just don't care. And so I get the idea that, $10 isn't necessarily enough. And so my inclination would be yes on additional ones in the same calendar year. Rather than, your second offense, and maybe it was 2 years ago you had one or something like that,
I think people that fall into that category and they're just blatantly ignoring it, that $10 adds up.
Oh, it does. And it can get you towed after a while when you don't pay it.
Right.
But it still doesn't add up enough to be apparently motivating some people.
There was. How often do we have repeat customers?
I can point out several in my neighborhood.
And I can also say the one in our neighborhood, he let it go for 10 times. And then they towed his truck. And then he had a fit. The one that cost him $1,000. And if we would have been going by the ordinance says that first ticket's $10, second one was $20 or something like that,
5,
or whatever it was, but then it went into, the third offense was supposed to have been a minor misdemeanor, but he never went into that. No, they didn't follow the ordinance with the minor misdemeanor, and then it just kept adding up until they got fed up, and they pulled the guy's truck and trailer one night.
Because I've gotten dinged with this more than a couple of times. And it was because I had my big work truck, when I had the big work truck, and it didn't fit my driveway with everything else. So I park it on the street, and every once in a while, it gets dark, and I get to watch TV with my wife, and go to bed and forget about it. I wasn't blatantly disregarding it, I would just forget. And I can tell you, worse than the $10, worse than the dollar amount, it was the hassle was. All right, now I gotta remember to pay this thing. In order to pay it, I gotta drive it up to Leonard Municipal Center. I mean, that was, for me, that was pretty motivating to not do it. To the point where I would be laying in bed halfway asleep and I'd go, oh no. So I'd get up and go out and do it.
The ordinance does say the second offense within 12 months, so that fits under that. I'm thinking that I kind of agree with you. The first offense, I don't want to be too, we're not here to be too, over penalized. Maybe the second offense within 12 months should go to 25. Maybe that would be more. How's your feeling on that?
I think we should just leave it the way it is. I think we should just leave it the way it is. I think it's,
And the third offense is a minor misdemeanor.
well, who brought up that we should change it?
I did.
And was that based on?
Based on,
by somebody?
I checked some other cities, and other cities are, we're following the track of some other cities that were 25. Some were higher than that. Bigger cities were more expensive.
Do you think as safety director, do you think that it would be, that we have a problem with people ignoring the $10 fines?
I think we do. But I think too, with 12 months, I think that's a good thing. When they go out and they, pull a plate or something, you can tell by the data, by the history. It's happened for 12 months. I don't think, enforcing it one way or the other, a lot of these cases, 25 or 50, may or may not matter. Thanks to your
I can see a compromise that I could agree with, which is warning, $10, 25, 50. And then
I'm
those
okay with
people,
that.
then those people that are falling into the category you described, which that so the higher dollar amounts would.
I mean, if we're never going to enforce the minor misdemeanor charge, which is what seems to be happening now,
Why wouldn't we enforce the minor misdemeanor?
it's part. Not that it's not a big deal, but I know a lot of times they'll go out and warn. And then the next couple of times ticket. The ticketing, I mean, to your point, is still, you gotta make a trip. The minor misdemeanor, if you guys say you should start doing that, then we'll do it. It's something that we'll need to, work for things. If we're saying, parking,
I think there's got to be at least some point at which, 10 tickets is a lot, in
Yeah.
a year, it's like, okay,
Well, that-
where's the threshold of?
yeah, and that's where we start getting into towing.
Yeah,
And I think the towing definitely,
yeah, no, I
Reach out.
agree.
Oh, yeah. That would be a big motivating factor.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I really don't have a problem with that. So,
I think that we don't need to put into this about a first offense, because I think they do give them a warning as a first offense anyway. But this leaves it up to the police officer's discretion.
Well, unfortunately, a lot of times they don't do anything when there's a parking violation. I mean, there has been issues where someone has parked on the street overnight, 3 nights in a row with no ticket. And it isn't until somebody else comes on shift that actually writes a ticket for them. So there's not always the proper enforcement of that.
All it takes is a phone call.
And that's how they end up getting a ticket, because some of us make a phone call.
It should be enforced.
Yes.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. I did have a talk with the police chief about that. And when he talked to the third shift, because of the overnight parking, one weekend, we wound up, they wrote 20 tickets in one weekend.
Yeah.
Because, they were reminded of it, but I think it tailed off again, where they're not watching the parking.
Well,
And
then
it
that's, maybe we should, somebody should comment to the police chief that maybe this should be,
I will talk.
I mean, the reality is it just needs to be consistently applied across the city. I mean, you can't go, Saturday, somebody writes a ticket, but Sunday, nobody writes a ticket, even though it's the same violation. We enforce equally and, consistently, rather than willy-nilly, depending on who's on duty and who's not on duty. Because then that's not fair to somebody who did park on the street and got a ticket versus somebody who parked on the street and didn't get a ticket.
No, that's a good point. If I know Sunday I'm not gonna get a ticket, then I'm gonna do it. If I know Saturday I'm gonna get a ticket, then I'm not gonna. I will talk.
maybe that's the best answer to speak with the chief and say, we would like you to enforce this a little better. And I don't have any problem with the morning the first Sunday. I don't think any of you do.
No,
We're not here to be onerous.
right.
So the 10, 25, 50, that, everybody agree on that?
I can agree.
I can agree with that.
We have the current 452.99 is the first offense $10, the second offense within 12 months is $25, and the third and all subsequent offenses within 12 months of the second offense shall be a minor misdemeanor.
I think we can just change that
Leave
to
it like it
50.
is.
No, I think we can, I mean, if they're never going to enforce it as a minor misdemeanor, we might as well change it and make it $50. So it's actually something that's
25,
different.
50.
But they actually have to enforce it as the second violation goes to 25 and not just $10 again.
So we can ask him to add the third offense and then fourth and all subsequent offenses. Change that to fourth. Okay, and then third. $50. Fair enough. I think we're all on the same page on that.
I think that's all right.
And I could even say that it's subject to being towed after, say, the fourth consecutive day.
Yeah.
Does that say that as a minor misdemeanor?
No,
Does that, it doesn't imply it?
no.
So the fourth,
The only way I can see 4 days in a row being an accident is if somebody went on vacation. and forgot
It's
to
not
tow.
necessarily 4 days in a row. Well, sometimes it is. Don't get me wrong. But it could be every other day, or, it still happen.
so the only intent is safety issue.
Right.
Just concerned about safety. So if you want to say the fourth time, they could be towed?
Now, the fourth offense within the 12 months.
Right.
correct?
Yeah, fourth offense.
Yeah.
Right.
Could or would be.
I would say subject to.
That works.
If I ever go on vacation, give me a call. myself.
Because we're all subject to oops.
I'll find
Oh,
a
yeah.
cheaper tow company than you guys.
So you want to say that that third sentence, just leave it alone, or just on the fifth or any further, then it's a minor misdemeanor. How do you wanna
Just
You can leave off the
Yeah.
minor
Yeah,
misdemeanor.
just take it out.
take it out?
Yeah,
And then it says penalties for violation, the first section 45203. What's that?
People leave that out, leave it, I don't remember what it was.
452, prohibited standing or parking places on a sidewalk in front of a public driveway within an intersection within 15 feet of a fire hydrant.
That's all gotta stay.
yeah.
That has to stay, that's part of the Ohio Revised Code, I believe.
All right, so we'll just write this, read all that, and subject to being towed. We'll just leave it at that.
Right.
Okay. I will inform you. Hopefully, we can wrap this up at the next meeting, because we don't want to do it in December. Okay, the second one, we have three choices for right-of-way tree lawns that our attorney graciously written for us. Three ideas. I think he's getting much closer to what we're looking for, I hope, unless somebody here doesn't agree. I'm sure, again, we're looking for safety issues, not to be penalizing, and we're also do understand people in their tree laws. We all have to maintain it, but that's not in every city. Now, the three that Mr. Lyons sent to us, if you have them on your email in front of you, I'd like to, the first one is A, the second one is B, and the third one is C. Does that help simplify when we're talking about it? Unless you guys disagree, but I think the first A is not quite what we're looking for. Doesn't say enough.
Well,
Right?
all right, here's my thought, 'cause I've been giving this a lot of thought. And from a safety standpoint, I do think we need to have limitations as to what can be on a tree lawn. I don't think there are, necessarily, willy-nilly, we can put whatever we want on the tree line. I think we have to have some limitations there for safety reasons. I do believe large rocks, concrete, large metal objects, those are all things that, are a safety issue. So I was thinking about this, it's like, in my mind, it's things that have, being a scientist, I think of things as like a certain density. That's why Lyons put together what he did. It was me bouncing around my own ideas of, how do we limit it? Like, what things do we allow? What things don't we allow? The more dense something is, the more damage it can do. And there's things in the first draft of the ordinance that I don't agree with. I don't agree that we can't allow them to plant flowers on their tree line. I don't care if you plant flowers. It's not a problem from a safety standpoint. It's not a problem from maintaining, the tree lawn itself. If somebody wants to put flowers there, put flowers in your tree lawn. I don't care. I mean, unless the mayor has a logical reason why that wouldn't be allowed. But I definitely don't think, large rocks and, metal objects and things like that should be there. If somebody wants to put, I don't know, little plastic address sign or whatever, there, I have no problem with that. It's not going to cause damage to a car. It's not going to cause any issues, So the question is, how do we define what's acceptable and what's not acceptable?
Well, in B, they do say the flowers, bushes, ground cover that shall not,
Shall not. And that's where I'm like, I don't have an issue with those,
And he's probably consistent
And it's what you got to at the end of that is how you define that. And that's why I like what I was saying. The last time we had an ordinance meeting, leaving it up to the discretion of the enforcing authority.
Yeah, but the problem with that is that you end up, then it goes to court and it's too vague. It's like, you know, we had ordinances before that have been too vague and not specific enough that they were enforceable. So I think you need to be specific. And that's why in my mind, even being overly technical and using something like density in there makes sense, at least in my mind, because anything greater than a density of 2 eliminates rocks in general, it eliminates metals in general, you know, but allows things like plastic. Plastics aren't denser than 2 grams per milliliter. You know,
I'm not a big fan of laws that are difficult for the average person.
no, exactly. But you have a list of things that, you know, are not allowed and a list of things that, you know, are acceptable. But you're never going to catch everything.
Right.
So that's where the technical part comes in, where you have that extra bit of information in there.
Or anything else that. Whatever.
Right. Right, is how I'm looking at it. Because I don't think we can ever come up with a list that truly encompasses what's both acceptable and not acceptable.
It doesn't say anything about tricycles, right?
Right, you know, it's like, so that's why,
Say that, you know, 2.0 G/ML, you know, to me that means.
right, because that's a density, that's grams per
Well, I
milliliter.
understand, but you're a
Right.
scientist. I'm not.
I know, but from a legal standpoint, that would be a defensible technical statement.
I have no idea how many milliliters my rocks are. But gravel and again, right now, my wife and I are gonna redo the front of our tree line.
Mhm.
And I use myself as an example because we have gravel right now.
Mhm.
I think we would prefer to put gravel. And I don't see gravel being a safety hazard.
No, and that's why what I had suggested was, you know, it could be up to 1 inch high. Where, you know, nothing over 1 inch high that could have a density greater than 2. So gravel would be perfectly acceptable. Because that's not going to cause a damage to a vehicle.
When we're saying at least the distance out of it completely. Also have the 5 feet distance in there. Because after moving mine 5 feet, just for experimental purposes, just to kind of get a look at it, it's still gonna protect the culvert from somebody parking on it. I didn't think it would. I thought it would be less, but it wasn't. It was still kind of in line with the culvert. Which, that's one of my biggest concerns, is that people are able to protect their investment.
Sure, and I get that.
Yeah, I kind of like the direction.
Because I have no issue, you know, with somebody putting, you know, like I said, a plastic sign with their address on it on the tree lawn. Like, why would that be a problem to me?
As long as it's breakable, it's gotta be breakable.
Well, plastic is breakable, you know, it's gonna break
No,
away.
it's just like in our neighborhood, though, we got the 4x4 posts for the mailbox, they're breakaway.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and there is someone on, I believe it's Dolphin, they have their mailbox all cemented.
Oh, yeah.
Bricks.
see,
Oh, yeah.
That's not legal.
So we're talking about leaving the Exceeds 2.0 in.
I think it needs to be in there in some fashion, whether we call it 2.0 grams per milliliter or change it into English units for you non-metric people. I think from a technical standpoint, you need to have something like that in there to cover
I'm not
those things that don't
disagreeing.
fall under your list.
Can we change this to 2.0 to what else would we change? So that the average person would even know what the heck that is.
Basically, 1 inch
Yeah,
gravel,
it has
I
to be
mean, is
1 inch
allowed.
gravel,
You could have pavers on there as long as they're not more than 1 inch high, so you have to make it more or less flush with the ground. You know, so there's options.
So we're saying so far we like B. The second.
D.
No, I
I
mean-
think there's still some work that needs to be done on this because I don't necessarily agree with everything that's in this
I
one,
understand,
like
but
the
it's-
flowers and, you know, things like that, that should be allowed.
Let's first answer this 2.0, whatever, G,
Uh-huh.
middle of it. Can we translate that into something?
Into English yet?
What is it? And the second question is, he's bringing up a pretty good point about flowers and bushes. What is the reason that that's in?
Well, I think we go back to Jim Sales, you know, a couple months ago, talked about breakaway objects.
Right.
which We've talked about,
Mm.
but also, you know, if you would you consider a bush or a flower breakaway? More than likely, but it may be classified as something else.
That's on the bush.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But it does have to be approved, but by the city, right?
still look at that 5 feet though, because, you know, just thinking about last discussion was Aqua Ohio has a water main break emergency. And, you know, a couple of you said, well, Aqua should have the machinery to move whatever they need to move. Well, it's not up to Aqua to move anything. It's up to the resident to keep things out of the way.
And they're not gonna have the equipment to remove a row of hedges.
True.
Yeah, but at the same time, if you go and look in my neighborhood where we have curbs and we have tree lawns, there are trees and bushes on those tree lawns. I have plants on my tree lawn that was planted by whoever lived in the house previously to me. You know, so obviously if Aqua had to do work, they may have to tear out that stuff.
Because we're talking about this as a safety issue, we probably shouldn't be grandfathering anybody in for an unsafe condition, right?
Right.
I agree.
I also have a problem with calling it a tree lawn if you can't have trees on it, because that's kind of a stupid nomenclature for it. It's a tree lawn, you have trees. Unless it's just a lawn.
Not a tree lawn.
Just point that out.
Michelle has a question.
So talking about this because this always comes up at all the council meetings and things like that, these things that are visually impaired. So if you're gonna allow hedges, bushes, you put something in there about things that would be vision impairing and what those things are going to look like, because if I plant a hedge 5 feet on the roadway and it's 3, 4 feet tall, my neighbor's got a Prius, they're gonna be complaining about my stuff in my tree. So you just need to think about something like that if you're gonna be allowed.
Flowers may not present that problem, but wood definitely would. I've already had a complaint now. Thunderbird about bushes.
Yeah, there is an ordinance
Yeah,
already about that.
I think it's 3 foot max. Coming by the,
From the road.
From the
You
road.
can't have-
yeah, but
Yeah, there's
but
already something.
there's a height limit, I think.
Yeah, there's height too, yes. Yeah. Because that's happened on. Buffalo.
Just so you can back out of your
But
driveway.
you can't leave stone
But you have to
right
incorporate
on the
something
edge.
to that into this legislation
That's what I.
so that it all aligns,
I don't know if we need to, if there's already another ordinance that covers it,
or at least
but we
reference
could
it.
reference it.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be more of a question for Jim Lyons.
So in 5 years, you're gonna rewrite the laws for our road as a part of that.
Or what?
You're gonna rewrite the laws in 5 years. And make that a family or sensors.
Probably not.
I would think. more than 50% of the cars today. So, eight of about two.
You know, you're correct, you're still discussing some people have trouble. You know, you get elderly, they have trouble.
Right out there.
And so we're thinking about everybody.
So the street, the 5-foot rule. Want to follow science with density, let's follow science with speed, what's already been written.
So what is it specifically we want to ask Mr. Lyons to fix? I know we don't.
5 feet and fine, 45 more. What street in the city is 45 miles?
I would say. Sounds like B, your selection B, which is the supplemental ordinance.
Right.
Does seem to cover most of what we want.
Correct.
Permit flowers.
You don't want them running up your flowers, gonna have flowers. But bushes could be more of a problem. So we could delete flowers.
Before you folks make a decision on anything, I would encourage you all to take a ride through the city and apply the standard for those who wish to apply. Everybody in the city, take a look and see what you find. You're gonna find a lot of people disappointed, just totally agitated. And it's gonna make a bigger world than it's worth. I said it before and I'll say it again. I've lived here for over 45 years. And I don't recall that this has ever been a major issue until now. So before you open up a can of worms, and except with one exception, that's what because you won't be here to take the odds for. Before the council enacts on anything, apply these standards to all those areas, especially down to like Chagrin, Ivy, Davis, and those areas. I'm all for the safety factor. I'm also for you can't place something that's going to damage a city snake class. I'm all for that. Some of this stuff is getting way out of hand right now. We're fixing a problem that's not broken.
Well, my preference would be to leave it to the discretion of the authority that's going to be making issuing the citation. Just like the noise ordinance is. But if we can't agree on that, then I certainly want to be able to make suggestions to on how it's going to be sculpted.
I think the problem is we would all like to leave it up to discretion, but it seems like it comes back and haunts us if we do. Unfortunately, we may have to be a tad more.
I think we have to be more specific, because if we're not, one person's discretion is different from another person's discretion. And, so this officer thinks this is okay, this other one says it's not okay. I don't agree with allowing that. We need to be
More specific.
reasonably specific.
When you say leave it up to the officer's discretion, we're basically saying if there's a car accident or something, then that's when we'll act. So we'll be reactive. Well, no, you're not gonna have an officer just cruising around looking for things in the right of way. They're gonna, if there is an activity or action, then yeah, that could add to the citation. Well, I ran my car into this, but look where this is in relationship to the end of the road.
Two points to that. I'm imagining more it's the service director or the service department that is going to be enforcing this. And it's gonna be just like any other law, it's gonna be complaint based. So I don't think you necessarily have to wait for an accident to happen to enforce this. I think if somebody complains, then you enforce it. And I think if you put language in there that just like the noise ordinance, an unreasonable object or something like that in the roadway, I think it could be enforced. And I think if a resident doesn't agree with the enforcement of it, then that's why we have the court system. And have their ability to go to court. Now, the question is, are we setting ourselves up for problems in court? And I think that's the position Rob's taking. I don't want to speak for you, but that's my interpretation.
Absolutely true.
And I would agree with Rob on that.
And I've said all along, if we have to send out letters and give people, you know, a fair amount of time to move things, that's what we'll do. And as Jim Sales has said, you know, we'll go through, you know, we know the right of way is different on Fern than on Pinehurst or Davis or Chagrin. We'll go through and figure that out, you know, beginning whenever it's passed. We know it's not going to be the same throughout the whole city.
But you can't just say this object, subjectively say this object is enough for, you know, but let the police officer decide what the service needs. More specific.
And Paul, I think the can of worms are,
I'm not necessarily agreeing with that. Trust me. I respect your opinion, sir. But, in the mayor's suggestion of adjusting this by street by street by street, I'm opposed to that too, because if it's safe in this street, it should be safe on that street. Okay, and then taking into consideration what Mr. Gray had said, our speed limits in our city. Basically, if I understood what Mr. Gray had said in the past, our streets are basically average by ODOT standards. Is that not correct? Based on the ordinance. Okay. So, like I said, I asked you guys before, ladies included, to take a tour through the city and apply these standards to the community. You're going to make a lot of people angry. But I also understand the safety concerns of it. Safety concerns there's a lot of them in the city, including the open ditches in the city. Those are safety concerns. Try getting off a fire truck in the middle of winter if we have snow. You don't know where the ditches are and what they're not. You could end up falling and breaking your leg. So, I mean, there's a lot of safety issues in the city that could be addressed a lot more concerning than this. But I also understand that we can't permit people to put boulders, humongous boulders out there.
what's the alternative? I don't even know, but what's the alternative? Just wash our hands of it
Step
right
back
now?
from it, yes, because like I said, in 45 years that I've lived, over 45, I don't recall this being that big of a topic. Yes, you can't permit people to build pillars like the guy on Lake Street had said that those were, you can't permit that stuff. And I'm sure there's a way to write legislation to stop that kind of nonsense. And especially when you look at places like down Salida Road. And as people build bigger and fancier houses in this community, because it is happening, you can't permit that stuff to be built. But to be able to permit them to protect their property from people turfing it, I think reasonable things could be placed there. I mean, I have not taken a look at the boulders in your culvert or the ones in Mr. Gray's, but there's got to be a reasonable thing there. But for right now, because it has not been an issue, and Mr. Johnson, to your credit, you said you thought you found one case with one of the Supreme Court where a driver was suing a homeowner. That's one case. Mr. Lyons wasn't aware of any case law that dealt with this. That's my point. Be prepared that if we're going to, if the council enacts an ordinance that affects this, that ordinance is fairly administered across the table, across the city. Everybody.
But the way it is now, the way it is currently right now, we've got letter, at least one letter that I know of,
Mhm.
that has gone out.
Yes,
So how is just ignoring it going to clarify whether or not these letters that have been issued should remain issued?
is there any more than one letter out right now, Mayor?
That's what I'm aware of.
Okay, it's the one.
And that was complaint driven.
Okay, that was complete. And I have no doubts that was more a neighborhood, I'm gonna piss in his weeds, excuse my language, because he peed mine at some point. It could be, I don't know for a fact. I'm just saying, this is gonna open up, like,
Well, I will tell you exactly. It was, if he can do it, what's gonna stop me?
do it. Here's the one thing I will agree to, and I said before about the safety of the snow plows. I think if the service director saw a condition that he dealt with, that he felt was detrimental to his crew's ability to keep the streets clean and to not damage its snow plows, that should be addressed, without a doubt. Because I have seen some areas in the city where people have put the boulders almost right there at the edge of the street. There is no wiggle room for a snowplow. So I wouldn't want to be on the service department doing that street or those streets. So that, I mean, this is such a difficult topic to address that you're not going to make everybody happy, but you are going to make a lot of people unhappy. And I know our job isn't to make people happy or unhappy, but I don't believe in poking a bear. And that's what I think you're gonna do. And just think about this before this goes further.
But I'm thinking that if we send out a letter to one, and there are others out there that may have big old city right on the shoulder, they should be getting letters.
Yes. But I think that should be based on the safety of the service department. So that they can safely clean the streets in the wintertime or any other time. The city property, the plows should not be jeopardized because somebody wants to have a rock near the street.
So your recommendation to the committee is to just take this off the committee and not send it to council.
Leave it in committee for now. Think about it before you act on it. Take the tour through the city. I mean, it's a big deal if this is addressed tonight or the next month. Not really. Actually, what I would rather see us do is address the possibility of these obstructions as they're being called. So close to the street, they're affecting the city's ability to clean that street. And some of them are on your street, on Fern Drive. I mean, the boulders are right there at the street. That, I'm surprised that wasn't addressed before. That's what my recommendation is. Stop and think about what you're doing. I know what you want to accomplish. I know what council wants to accomplish. And apply these to all those people.
Well, I know some of the houses you're talking about. I don't feel like I need to make a specific tour around the city to do that. I agree that there's gonna be a lot of people in violation if we put any ordinance out.
Yes.
And don't just leave it the way it is. So once everybody were to take that trip around and come to that realization, what is your suggestion that we do with this ordinance?
I would probably abandon this process right now and take up another endeavor to protect the city's ability to clean the street. In other words, there's a distance between the edge of the roadway and any obstruction greater than 1 inch above. Matter of fact, I'd say anything that's above the elevation of the street, the plows have to be able to safely traverse that street.
Right, so now I think where you've gotten is to where we are, we're trying to decide what that needs to
Well, I'm hearing things like you can't have gravel, you've got to have pavers.
No, we never said
Yeah,
that.
we never
That's,
said
that's,
that.
that's in a couple.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, bear with me.
that was a topic.
Yes,
Yeah,
Uh,
boy.
and everything's got to be breakaway. Maybe not. Until you find out what happens to that one lawsuit. I'm curious. I've looked for it. I can't find it. So I wish I had your astute ability to
So what's
find
the
out.
onus of the pavers?
What's that?
What is the onus of having pavers?
I never said they need to be pavers.
I think that's something Mr. Lyons put in.
You are aware it's got to be 15 inches of base crack below that. My culvert, my pipe is not 15 inches below there, plus 3 inches of dirt for 4 inches.
Congratulations, I said gravel's fine.
So
Move on.
to answer your question, that's my reply.
Right, so, but it sounds like then we're back to the conversation about what the ordinance should say. And I would be interested in hearing everybody's opinion of what that should say. We're not gonna make it subject to the opinion of the service director or
Maybe it's the service director.
the third service, the authority,
Yes.
enforcing authority. Then we have to decide what it's gonna say. That's what we're trying to work our way through right now.
Okay.
I understand worrying about the plows and things like that, but we also have to take into account the utilities that are in the right of way. It's not just the plows, it's the utilities.
You know, I hate to put it this way, Mayor, but if you apply that to everything that's in the right of way, then by that standard, every homeowner, if the water cut or utility has to tear up the right of way and go tear up somebody's driveway to get underneath it, the homeowner should tear up his own apron. They don't.
So,
The
Paul,
utility does.
what are some of the objects that you think should be allowed that we wouldn't be allowing?
I would permit, I don't know whether to call them boulders or rocks, but a certain size of that, so that if somebody did hit it, they're going to know they hit something. So that they understand they're off the street. First of all, if you hit it and it's off the street, then they should be nailed for failure to control. Which, if I'm not mistaken, that was done over on Reynolds Road when the car hit the sign and ran and hit the pole. That's all I mean,
So size and density,
yeah, I mean, I can't get as technical as Rob, because I'm not a scientist. I don't
size
even
and
play one on
density,
TV.
what about distance from the road? What,
There should be something distance from the road, but it shouldn't, 5 foot? No. Be reasonable. Be reasonable.
okay, so what do you suggest instead of 5 feet?
2 feet,
2 feet from
18
the road?
inches, 2 feet, yeah. Our guys that plow the snow do a very good job. And I've never seen any of them fear that far off without there being extenuating circumstances.
I'd be okay with 2 feet.
I don't think there should be rocks. I don't think there should be metal objects. I don't think there should be anything that's of that density.
Rob, I would agree with you. Metal objects, I'm not sure what you have in mind for that, but I can't see any metal object that I know of other than an aluminum driveway stake, reflector stake.
Oh, people can be creative.
Oh, I'm sure they could, but I'm just saying that, like I know there's a house down the street from me that has half cut wine barrels or something out there. He puts them out there every spring and they're filled with plants and stuff. They look great. And I believe part of his thing is because he got tired of people turfing his yard.
Yep.
So, and that's all I'm looking for. People should be able to protect them.
That would fall within the density less than 2.
Okay, I'm okay with that. I said I'm not a scientist.
See, you know,
Rob.
it's like, that's why, I was trying to cover most things that, yeah, things that are density greater than 2 are gonna be rocks, metals,
But as Dave said, could you put that in English?
well, that's why we have, what are we gonna put into our list?
Okay,
That's just to cover everything else that we don't think of.
and as far as rock, snow, boulders or whatever, there should be a dimension. I don't know if that falls in this dimension of 2.0 grams per milliliter.
So
Didn't we have?
anything that will be a rock
Uh-huh.
has to be 1 inch or less. So gravel was perfectly fine.
Yeah, but I think they should be able to put larger rocks.
See, and I don't, so we'll agree to disagree on that,
Okay.
so.
Because
Yeah, when we had Mr. Sales and Mr. Lyons, we talked about weight and dimensions,
Right.
and that kind of went away.
And I know, like, for example, I talked to Brent about when my son built his house down at the corner of Beach where Lincoln Pinehurst to get, make sure it was okay to put gravel on there, because I got tired of people turfing that. Coming down there, and it makes it a better road. Now it's better to keep the damn vegetation, you know, so it doesn't look like crap. And I think that helps make our city look nicer, when you don't have all these areas of turf. I saw the pictures of Mr. Gray's home when it was turf, that was horrible. And how much do you want people to spend keeping their yards in that looking nice? And I know that's another one of your goals. So,
I think so. I have no problem with gravel.
and then your bit about height of, does not exceed 1 inch, I still have a problem with that. But I do think there has to be a dimension of what, like the rocks you put out the crest. Those should fall within a certain dimension. What it is, I don't know. I don't think you should be able to drive your car into it and stop it dead like you're into the side of a cliff.
Well, let's figure that out.
Okay.
I think there's so many different aspects of it. Mass, density, size. What's the best way to do that?
Apparently Rob's way is the best way.
I think, Robert,
Well, density is mass divided by volume, so I mean, that's why I use density.
can we say density in pounds, like 5 pounds?
Well, technically, the English units is slug per feet cubed. Just to be specific, and I thought that was a little more confusing to anybody. Or you can do pound.
So I think we go with the density, but we put it back to 5 feet.
5 feet, I think, is excessive.
Then
Like I said, I was for 18 inches, a foot and a half to 2 feet.
I would want 3.5 feet, just go down the middle.
I'm sticking with foot and a half to 2 feet.
Like, this isn't Pawn Stars.
I happen to like the 1 inch. Density, I just most of us don't understand what the 2.0 gram, that's the only problem.
Well, we could do pound per feet cubed. You know, cubic foot. 1 pound per cubic foot. We have to convert that, you know.
But then we're
2.0 grams per milliliter. I have to do the conversion, but this would be some funny number, but. we can come up with that.
then we're saying nothing in the right of way at all that's greater than that. That's
And how do you prove what the density is?
You can determine it, make the mass of it and the volume of it. I mean, if you ever need to do it in a court of law, that's what you would do. And it is completely defensible.
The 2.0 grams per milliliter is what the point of law would work. Then I would like to stick with whatever works in court.
Like I said, we'll have the list, and this is just covering whatever isn't in the list. Because I can't think of everything somebody's gonna come up with.
No. And we need to be, you're right. Not too specific, but. You have a problem with 1 inch.
Well, I have a problem with, because of not being able to protect covered culverts. By all the culverts are in the right of way. So if you can't put something to prevent trucks from parking on your culvert, then I think that's where I have a problem.
Okay, can I answer that question? I thought we were allowing those, they breakaways, but they're like, what do they call them? Little red reflectors, yeah. With, stand up alerts. You put a line up along there.
Who's gonna put those on?
You just come up with a notch. That's breakaway.
The culvert pipe, if we go back to that. Mr. Sales at one point said if there's 8 to 10 inches of culvert pipe is good. Now, does everybody know that they have 8 to 10 inches of cover over culvert pipe? Probably not.
I want to bring
I
up,
like to see that in writing because SDR 35 is like 2 feet.
You know, Jim Sales.
SDR 35 is 2 feet.
Right. One more point I'd like to make is all this is being said in the name of safety. The ditches provide a bigger hazard than your boulders.
Oh, yeah.
Or your
I agree with that.
or anything else that's in the right of way I've seen in the city. Car loses control, it goes into somebody's ditches,
That's actually,
yeah, it's gonna be a bigger nightmare, and I think the city would be probably very liable for that. If the homeowner's liable for what they put in the right of way, the city would be liable for that as well.
however, we are progressing on that. Is that correct? We are working on that. front.
All the storm sewer projects that we've undertaken, you don't see the ditches. There's gotta continue.
And I
to work.
agree with that.
And we have temporarily stopped just to get our debt load
Correct,
into
right,
more, and then we will continue again.
right. I mean,
So-
Southland, we should probably, looking at things, probably not next year, but the year after.
So we have a plan of working on those ditches. So
Right.
Do we have an
I
ordinance that
think
prevents
that-
people from parking in the grass? Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Right? So,
Yes,
so if somebody does park on the grass or gravel in the right of way, and it's a complaint, then that'll be enforced, right?
Well, especially on Fern, there were 2 individuals within the last couple of months. The one right on the corner of Fern and Beach feels the need to just pull onto his lawn, and that sent an officer out there, and also between Beach and Andrews, there was a guy who just moved in, and the neighbors complained. He didn't, he was there like a week. Officer went out and warned him about on the grass. But yeah, they do enforce.
So if 2 tires are on the grass, that's enforceable, right?
I don't know about the 2 tires, but in these cases, the whole vehicle was like on the front lawn.
I wonder what the actual ordinance says, though.
Yeah,
I think that it would be enforceable if 2 tires were on the grass.
now you're talking side of the road, tires.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd have to look at it.
we were just looking at parking under 452. I don't know which one that would fit.
And I did complain about a parking issue. I still have to decide on this parking. This car parking. Late.
I think this committee has already addressed it. We want to see that it is enforced. Parking, illegal parking. We've already addressed that. I agree with you. And we've already addressed it. We've asked the mayor to contact the police chief to make sure that
I told the homeowner, told the cop, gas line water main breaks and I'm affected. I'm suing the city, suing you and the homeowner. Because they're all medical.
you have a right to sue whoever you wish.
So I think considering that there is an ordinance that prevents people from parking on the grass, then, and as long as that's gonna be enforced, when driven by a complaint, then I think, yeah, I think I'm on board with Rob. I'm saying, anything beyond that density, 2.0
grams per milliliter,
grams per milliliter.
4 grams per centimeter cube.
Yeah.
And then we also come up with a list for the average person to kind of identify the most likely culprits.
Like I said, I also think, we should allow flowers on the tree lawn. I think that kind of,
Based on science, 25 miles an hour.
But have we agreed to the 1 inch height, but we don't know, it says within 4 feet of the projection of the right. Yeah, right after your, subsection. Yeah. 103.8.04, he's talking about the density, the height. And it has to be within 4 feet of the projection of the right. So within 4 feet of the neighboring property line.
What do we want to see for the next meeting? What do we want to see for the next ordinance meeting? I don't think we're gonna have anything. for
no,
the
I,
next
let me
meeting.
play with the wording and come up with something. Since I seem to have an idea of what we're looking at,
Right.
and Lions isn't here to hear our discussion. And then we can go from there.
Yeah.
Does that seem reasonable?
No,
I'd appreciate that.
I appreciate that. And I'm just gonna say, I don't blame people for, and it worked on their culverts, but like Mr. Gray has wanting to protect it.
Sure.
I certainly understand it. Okay. We'll move on.
We're gonna call this in an hour. We got a daughter. I have to pick up.
Well, can we do the last two real quickly? I don't know. See, the next one is on the trees. We can come back to that. I don't think.
The Willoughby one we have to come back to because that wasn't the correct ordinance. I gotta go back and find that right, the correct one.
Okay.
So.
And
that's
squirrels
that
are
for
a
now.
nuisance. And squirrels are a nuisance.
Squirrels are already in it. Somebody said that to me. So you're saying squirrels are already there?
No, he said they're nuisance.
They are.
He's just saying they are.
And if they're not, they should be.
They should be. I agree.
Rats with keep tails.
I gave the 618. Here's animals. I agree squirrels should be added. What was that, 61819?
Who brought that one up, by the way? Where'd that come from?
Remember everything. Sorry.
Wasn't me.
Could that have been written on service director?
Did that come from the administration?
The only reason I wonder if it came from the service director is because I know there was a lady, I think, on Southland that was cleaning all kinds of critters out in her front yard. And she cleaned everything up from my understanding, except for salt. And some squirrel feeding things that she had. Because squirrels were not listed as a nuisance animal. There's nothing to do about it, if I remember.
So we'll have to add that. Well, just one more thing. I don't know if I should bring it up here. I had brought up a complaint about someone feeding cats, and I had asked Holly if they could cat if that was done.
You mean the organization that handles that? I'm not sure you have.
See, my concern is she's got her garage door up
Right.
about 4 inches, and she's got food in there. Don't tell me she's not getting more than cats, and there's cats all over the place. You know, the neighbors are just,
It's already violating the sterile cat policy.
yes, I want something done about
If you want to deal with cats again, can you wait until after?
it. I was just making a point, you want to go, I respect that. This meeting is adjourned at 7 o'clock.
I wasn't sure he wasn't referring to after he's done on the fence.
I'm pretty sure that's what he was referring to. And, you know,
It had nothing to do with getting.
I don't want to be involved in a cat conversation.
That's
That's what
okay.
makes two of
There
us.
was nothing good about that. mean,
I just
the
wanted to
resolution,
make-
the resolution is good.
Yes.
Anything else?
No, that's it, I turned it. Do I need a vote to adjourn?
No,
I don't think so.
it's fine. We're gonna draft.
All right.
All right, thanks for coming.
Sorry, I didn't mean to rush things along.
Oh, no, fine.
Oh, no, thank you, Preston.
See you,
I
Preston.
appreciate